The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Welcome to another edition of Ask Claire along the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I am your host, Claire Hall, and glad to welcome my frequent co-host today, Gabriel Schechter. Gabriel, how are you, sir?
I am fine, thank you. Had a good holiday weekend and ready to head toward the end of the year. Busy writing, reading, editing, the usual.
Sounds like a great way to spend your days, and I do as much of that as I can myself.
Yep.
So,
it's the way to go.
Indeed. So one of the things we share interest in is the great game of baseball, and I think just about all its aspects, and a love of literature as well. And so when we were kicking around ideas for a future program, one of the ones we came up with was a focus on baseball poetry, and more specifically, the poetry of Ogden Nash. And I have to admit that before you introduced me to Nash on baseball, I was not aware that he had written about our great game. And so, let's maybe start it off. We had talked about an opener that would give us just a kind of a neat flavor of Nash and Nash on baseball. And are you ready to do that?
I sure am. Nash was known as the greatest humorist among American poets. He lived from 1902 to 1971, lived in Baltimore for a long time, big baseball and football fan. He's known for his idiosyncratic verse. Sometimes he writes very short lines, pithy, and sometimes he writes lines that go on for 40, 50, 60 words, but he always has a clever rhyme in everything he wrote, whether it's 4 words in a line or 50. It always involves some ingenious rhyme, and he's just delightful, as we will hear in these samples. His best-known baseball poem is called Line Up for Yesterday, an ABC of Baseball Immortals, published in Sport magazine in 1949. And he used each letter of the alphabet to refer to one great old-timer and all the old immortals. And it's too long to, to give you the whole thing, but here's a good sampling. 5 or 6 of them, and these are very short and pithy, and they'll give you the idea. Dizzy Dean, for example. D is for Dean, the grammatical diz. When they asked who's the tops, said correctly, I is. E is for Everest, his jaw in advance, never afraid to tinker with chance. Yeah. H is for Hornsby. When pitching to Raj, the pitcher would pitch, then the pitcher would dodge. I have to throw in, this is the only one not for a ball player. It's about himself. I is for me, not a hard-hitting man, but an outstanding all-time incurable fan.
I love that. I love that. And I love knowing that he loved the game so much. I remember when my mother many years back, tried to introduce me to poetry, and unfortunately it didn't take, but I'm hoping in this fourth quarter of my life, maybe correct that. But, the one of Nash verse that really stuck in my head, and probably the single most famous thing he ever wrote, would you agree? Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. And, that's so clever, so short, so pithy, but yet,
he's very much
not... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying he's just very much to the point. Even when he's writing something elaborate, it's all very much to the point.
Yeah, and we were talking the other day off mic about, kind of his, that he could use very elaborate structures, very unusual rhymes, and yet, I'll say definitely you don't get lost. You keep the focus, at least in any poem that I've read or that you've introduced to me. I never scratch my head, as I will admit I do with some poets, say, okay, what are they talking about here?
Exactly. You're talking to someone who has a master's degree in English and has always lacked an affinity for poetry. Mm-hmm. I think and write in prose. I'm writing, so I write, and I may have written a couple of poems along the way. Actually, I wrote a Valentine poem to my late wife Linda in the form of an Ogden Nash poem, an Ogden Nash limerick, actually.
Okay.
But Nash is one of a handful of poets who always gets my attention. So let me finish off this part of it with three of the original Hall of Fame electees.
Please.
J is for Johnson. The big train in his prime was so fast he could throw 3 strikes at a time. 4 lines. It just sums up the essence of Walter Johnson, the pitcher, doesn't it? And he sums up Matthews. He sums up Mathewson in 4 lines. M is for Matty. M is for Matty, who carried a charm in the form of an extra brain in his arm. There's Matty.
Again, that's so perfect, because if anybody, he's before your time and mine, but if anybody knows the legend of Christy Mathewson, not only the fact that he was one of the few college men to play baseball at the time, but that he was known as the truly brilliant pitcher. I mean, the mental game. And so, in a few words, Nash has managed to say that it took me a minute of babbling.
Yeah.
Right?
Incidentally, I like your description. The second coming in our lifetime. I really think Greg Maddux is a descendant of Matty in his approach to the game. One of the great things about Nash is his creative rhymes. He's willing to change a word or make up a word or a sound just to get this rhyme. And here's one about Bill Terry, Giants first baseman known as Memphis Bill. T is for Terry, the Giant from Memphis, whose 400 average you can't overemphasize. And that's it. You can't overemphasize. Yep. Okay.
And they called him Memphis Bill because he was from Nashville, right? Strictly a non sequitur on my part, but again, Bill Terry, the last National Leaguer to hit 400. If you know nothing else about 401 in 1930. If you know nothing else about Bill Terry in baseball history, you probably know that salient fact. And
and you can't, and indeed you can't overemphasize it. All right, last one from the ABCs.
Okay.
R is for Ruth. To tell you the truth, there's just no more to be said. Just R is for Ruth.
Yeah, I love that because, again, anybody who even has a nodding acquaintance with baseball history would know that Babe Ruth is the most outsized, legendary, colorful figure in the history of the game, and there's probably, you were with the Baseball Hall of Fame for many years, and would it be fair to say that writing about Ruth is to writing about baseball as writing about Abraham Lincoln is to writing about American presidents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In other words, they're such multifaceted, fascinating figures that. Yeah. So I love that.
And Nash realized he couldn't sum them up in 4 lines, so he just summed up the inability to sum them up.
Yeah, which is brilliant in itself.
Sure.
So where do you want to take it from here? I know we've got at least a couple more Nash pieces you want to tee up.
I have this nice volume called Selected Poetry of Ogden Nash, 650 rhymes, verses, lyrics, and so on. And only in the last 6 months have I gotten around to discovering his 2 baseball poems in this volume, which I would like to share with you. One harkens back a different era in baseball when it was primarily experienced via the radio, and you would sit down of an afternoon, later of an evening, but to enjoy the baseball game while doing something else.
Right.
You know, you didn't just stare at the radio. You were, people were cooking, they were playing other games, they were reading, doing all kinds of things. It's something that I've enjoyed the last couple of years, being back in Oregon and on the West Coast, where I can listen to a ball game from the East Coast during the daytime. It's a night game there, but it starts at 4:30 here, and it's still light when it ends. And that's when I do a lot of my writing and editing. So here is Nash's story about that. It's called Hand Me Down My Old School Sliding Paths, or There's a Hint of Strawberry Leaves in the Air. And he talks, it's a poem about listening to a ball game while reading a novel by Mrs. Humphrey Ward. I have to tell you a little bit about her. She was an English novelist around the turn of the 20th century, whose novels reflected a version of Christianity based not on theology and religion so much as social service. So the novels were about virtue, about doing good, helping the poor, making things better for children, health, things like that. And they were romances with a kind of a pious tone to them. So here's Nash's poem. This is the outstretched tentative toe, the placid paddling into dotage, to complement the radio with the library of a summer cottage. What calmer joy can life afford? What more can fortune offer or fame than reading Mrs. Humphrey Ward while listening to the baseball game? A glimpse of ducal silhouettes, a flash of electronic science, as kind hearts clash with coronets, also the Cardinals with the Giants. The heroine's birth is most unusual. It's 3-2 on Enos Slaughter. What would she think of Stanley Musial, and he of Lady Rose's daughter? I love that stanza.
Yes.
The code of stout King Edward's reign conceals outstanding hanky-panky, suggesting time and time again the hidden ball of Eddie Stanky. Beware, fair child, of how you stray. Warkworth, that cad, is far too cuddly. In the 9th, with 2 away, she's rescued by the Duke of Chudley. In a world where even umpires err, why scorn the Duchess's stumbling start? Quote, when she learned at last he needed her, the dear knowledge filled and tamed her heart, unquote. Oh, bury me where the blue begins, where ball meets bat as Lord meets Lord, out where the home team always wins, and virtue is its hump reward.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I love it.
It's delightful, isn't it?
It is. I mean, yeah, I just pulled up the Ogden Nash Poetry Foundation on my telephone. One of the beauties of having the world's knowledge at our fingertips, and you know, talking about classic Nash lines, and not about baseball, but how about this? If called by a panther, don't answer.
Yes.
You know, it's just his delight in wordplay, but you know, and that's certainly evident throughout the piece that you just shared. And you know, some people may think of baseball or sports as low entertainment and novels as high entertainment, but you know, just trying to listen to that on many levels, and one of the takeaways is, you know, his appreciation for everything beautiful and memorable, and that we should share it. Yeah.
In a slightly different vein, let me throw this short, real life poem at you.
Please.
By Ogden Nash, called "Everybody Tells Me Everything." Mind you, he probably wrote this 75 years ago. Tell me if this isn't relevant.
Sure.
I find it very difficult to enthuse over the current news. Just when you think that at least the outlook is so black that it can grow no blacker, it worsens. And that is why I do not like the news, because there has never been an era when so many things were going so right for so many of the wrong persons.
Ooh. That's, you know, that's another thing in a lot of his pieces. I mean, it is, what would you call it? Just kind of a subtle, totally unexpected, and yet totally appropriate gotcha.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking for, I'm not going to find it soon enough. Because we have another baseball poem to read, of course.
Yeah. So.
I did find it.
Oh, you found it. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I did find it. It's another short one. It's called "A Caution to Everybody." Consider the auk becoming extinct because he forgot how to fly and could only walk. Consider man, who may well become extinct because he forgot how to walk and learned how to fly before he thinked.
Extinct. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
so he wasn't just making idle verse. He had things to say. He just did it in such a disarming way that you sort of had to pay attention and then let him bop you between the eyes with the point.
Disarming, that is a perfect word, Gabriel. I really think, you know, because, yeah, you're kind of lulled along that this nice, easy, clever, sometimes unexpected rhyme, and then all of a sudden the payoff comes, and like you say, he bops you right between the eyes.
You know, he's sort of like a combination of Cole Porter with the clever rhymes and, say, Art Buchwald.
Yes. I mean, Buchwald. I mean, we were talking about him not too long ago, and, you know, 30 plus years of political commentary and, you know, riotously funny stuff, and yet, you know, it was never satire or humor just for the point of humor, but he always had a larger point to make. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, I've got one more for you.
Yes, please.
And this one, I can tell you exactly when it was written. It was written early in the 1969 season. And it is titled "Coefficients of Expansion," A Guide to the Infant Season. It's 1969, of course, the first year of 4 divisions. There were 4 new teams: Padres, Expos, Royals, and Mariners. Pilots, excuse me. And this was the incurable fans' response to it. Here we go.
Okay.
And notice how it might be tough listening to this to remember where the rhymes are, but they're there and they're amazing. What happened in the Hot Stove League last winter? Well, baseball got a new commissioner, and the Senators, who were still the same old Senators, although not the original Senators, because the original Senators are now the Twins, got a new manager, the Splendid Splinter. Pitchers have been ordered to deliver the ball more allegro and less adagio. And if you're wondering about the Royals, well, the Royals used to be Montreal, but now Montreal is the Expos, and Kansas City, which was the A's, is the Royals. And the A's, which were first Philadelphia and later Kansas City, are Oakland, under the partial aegis of Joe DiMaggio. In Lower California, confusion is rife around the pot spots and hot rotteries. No one is able to differentiate between San Diego's twice-born Padres and the Padres' reborn Johnny Padres. And, I know, really, and apropos newly launched satellites, the disappearance of Mickey Mantle was hardly compensated for by the appearance of something called the Pilots, except perhaps to a few Seattleites. The mound has been lowered because the hitters complained that the pitchers were too parsimonious and poggy. And Satchel Paige pitched 2 scoreless exhibition innings for the Braves of Atlanta, formerly the Braves of Boston and Milwaukee. Finally, at least one sportscaster has added a phrase to his cargo of argot, and I quote him verbatim: "When a batter leaves a runner stranded on third, he has failed to plate him." So, that's how it went. This wrap-up has been brought to you through the authority of the undersigned lifelong fan and is not intended in any way to express for the aforementioned expansion said lifelong fan's enthusiasm, approval, or written consent. That's the end.
Yeah, I mean, it is delightful for so many reasons, on so many levels, but the first time you shared it with me, I thought, oh, wow. I mean, this is not a casual fan. This is somebody, a kindred spirit to you and I, and no doubt many of those listening to this program. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening, but somebody who truly lives, eats, sleeps baseball.
It has occurred to me that since he died in 1971, we were deprived of whatever poem he would have written about the designated hitter.
Oh,
he just could have lasted 2 or 3 more years. We would have had another great poem to read today.
Oh, no doubt. What would he have rhymed with Bloomberg? Let's give that some thought. How about gloom in the berg?
Yeah, gloom in the berg.
I don't know. We'll have to. But as wonderful as this is, we have just barely scratched the essence. I mean, you shared with me, and I'm going to be dipping into a whole anthology of baseball-related poetry, recent works, and yet. Baseball poetry in itself is quite an honorable tradition, and one that always stuck with me that I mentioned to you. And let me quote just a little bit from the beginning and end from memory, if I might. Polo Grounds by Rolf Humphreys. And, I love the phrase at the beginning, the first stanza. Time is of the essence. This is a highly skilled and beautiful mystery. Has anybody, ever really captured the essence of baseball, more perfectly in so few words as he did right there?
Boy,
You know,
That's a capsule
yeah,
view, absolutely.
yeah. And he wrote it in the late 30s, so he's talking about giants of the 30s, Mel Ott, Bill Terry, Harry Danning, and then he just seamlessly peels back layer upon layer of giant players, going back to Amos Russi, Smiling Mickey Welch, and finally mentioning Jack Humphreys, a left-handed catcher who sometimes played the outfield in '83. And, he doesn't state it directly, but presumably Jack Humphreys was an ancestor of his. And then at the very end, he offers this, again, returning to the beginning. Time is of the essence. The crowd and players are the same age always, but the man in the crowd is older every season. Come on, play ball. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I have known that poem for probably 40 years, and still, it can produce a chill. So,
time is of the essence, and the opposite sentiment, sort of by Roger Angel, who wrote about how in baseball you can defeat time because there's no prescribed end point or end time to it.
Right. Unlike every other sport, that is the essence of its beauty. And so what I take from time is of the essence, and I'll be curious, your thoughts, but, even though, and again, the ending, that even though the game itself is timeless, it will go on forever. If the idiots who run it don't ruin it, to paraphrase Bill Veeck, but at some level it will go on forever, and yet we don't. That our time to enjoy the game is finite and fleeting, and so maybe to appreciate it to as great a degree as we can.
Exactly. I think back to my father, who was born in Cincinnati in 1906 and attended the 1919 World Series. I think about my own sadness that a Mets fan also. He died in 1984 in time to miss Dwight Gooden's arrival, Tom Seaver's 300th win, and the rest of the decade for the Mets. And I think about that for myself too. I'm very aware that my baseball life is only a fraction, if humanity is lucky, of baseball's life.
Yep. Wow.
That's why we cherish every game.
Indeed, every game, every day, even if it's like here we are on December 1st as we record, a day without baseball being played, at least professionally in the United States. But I feel like in some ways maybe we need a wrap up, but in other ways I'm feeling like I think you've already provided it. So, but I don't want to sign off before I give you a chance. A final thought, a final word, a benediction for our audience.
How about a couple of more items from Nash's ABC?
Perfect.
Let me read you the last four.
Okay.
Because the poem went alphabetically. W is for Wagner, the bow-legged beauty. Short was closed to traffic with Hannes on duty. X is the first of two X's in Fox, is Jimmy Fox, who was right behind Ruth with his powerful socks with two X's. Y is for Young, the magnificent sigh. People batted against him, but I never knew why. And finally, Z is for Zenith, the summit of fame. These men are up there. These men are the game.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Gabriel Schechter, as always, a delight. Thank you for joining me on this edition of the program. Thanks to everybody for listening along the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Have a fabulous day, and until we meet again, happy trails.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.